Okay, I think we're on. Um, Finally got a chance to sit down and chat. I've been overseas, so the Portland season review had to wait. Was over there doing some scouting for next season. I'm back to cold Melbourne currently, and I've obviously got a lot more time to look at NSL and think about what's transpired. And thought I could cover more in a pod than I could typing out an article. So yeah, last season we finally climbed back up the mountain and claimed the prize that I thought we deserved, and obviously some pretty bizarre events occurred that maybe helped our path a little bit. Um, but I think we were just winners. So been really enjoying the light-heartedness that comes with achieving a goal, and yeah, feel really satisfied and open-minded to what happens next. But feel whole again. I was pretty bitter after the Kawhi injury, and the Spurs obviously deserved the title wholeheartedly. They were the better team, and I just felt very bitter and had a big weight on my shoulders coming into this season. So that's lifted. So I think I've got a lot more to give the NSL, and probably a better community member now that I've fulfilled that part of me that was missing. So the Portland season, starting off in free agency, it was a disaster again. So it's just deja vu, and everyone's probably sick of hearing me complain about it. But it just seemed shocking that a 78-win team couldn't really sign anybody. Is what it is. We went into the season having to buy 3 bench players with seconds again, so just tap into all those assets, which sucked, but it is what it is. Then the first week of the season rolled around, and obviously going in without Kawhi, I'm already skeptical about what we can do. No one's interested in him at that point. And then to kick things off, we lose most of the games in the first week, and totally capitulate against the Pistons and score like 60 points, which I never thought was even possible. So that was fun. So after that, I was ready to blow it up, and I never thought that would be an option. But I had talks to move Russ out, and if that penny dropped, I was just going to sell all the assets down. I was able to get my first round pick back, so I would benefit from any inability to win. But the Sacramento trade never eventuated because he couldn't give me the assets that I wanted, and we were really, really close to a deal, but it just fell through. And after that, the Westbrook suitors fell off a little bit. So the value was in trying to keep winning and just see what happens. And Durant was blocked until week 14 or something. So I had a 1-week window to try and get Durant if that was still a possibility, if he was still at the Mavericks. And I tried for Giannis, I offered Kawhi, and every pick I could move, and no interest. And after that, the juice wasn't really worth the squeeze. So it was just a really frustrating start to the season. Drummond was amazing. The one guy I did get in free agency, Drummond, held the whole team together, which was great. And then obviously there's not a lot of change in those first 8 weeks because so many players are trade blocked. But we had a good start. Once the the league settings were modified, it balanced out, and we found our run and gun style. And Harden and Westbrook were amazing the whole time. First big splash of a trade was Bobby Portis, which in hindsight, no, actually, the value was fine. The value was good. He just wasn't going to impact 2K the way I wanted him to. But he was a great, tall, athletic big, and he came in really handy later as he was moved for Durant. But it was just status quo. For much of the season, we had our health. We had Drummond, Portis or Gibson, Covington, Harden and Westbrook. And we were getting wins, and we were hovering around the top 3-4 in the West all season. But we weren't good enough to beat Spurs as built. And obviously you'd check for Kawhi news, but I always had a feeling that he errs on the side of caution. He wasn't going to rush back for to try and ramp up end of season when games can be their toughest. So I assumed he was out. And I just had to be content with having a good season and seeing what happens, which hasn't been good enough for me in previous seasons. I've had to set the goals a bit higher. But yeah, then deadline started approaching, and I knew the team that I already had was really good, but I needed that other piece. So it got back to Kawhi talks. I talked to Nick a huge amount throughout the year about an Ingram for Kawhi swap, but then Ingram wasn't going to allow me to win the title either. So he's just too underdeveloped in 2K. And I would have got a lot of picks back, but then I'm wasting prime years of these older 2K stars where the value is in trying to win. The value is in the legacy of being two-time champion. So I ignored that. Really battled to get LJ on the phone for more than a few minutes at a time, and that just dragged out for weeks as the deadline approached. I'd kind of had enough with that and was just resigned to the fact that I would just see what happens with Harden and Westbrook. And thankfully, well, not thankfully, but the Mavericks were in a situation where they wanted to blow it up. Smokey swooped in as Smokey does and closes deals with everybody. And I just got roped in to add the value and end up with Durant, and the three-way trade works. So deadline passes, team set. Had to cough up 2 more first-round picks for Whiteside. I didn't know if I needed him, but then if you're going to spend money, assets to be a true contender, you can't stop. And I think that's what some GMs really struggle with, is that it's really risky. It's a lot to give up to truly put yourself on the edge of winning a title with no guarantees you actually do. But that deal was there. I knew if I didn't get Whiteside, someone like Spurs, someone like Hornets, whoever it was gets him. So I ended up paying an extra first than he was worth to be the deal that stood out amongst the others. And he fit in really well. And I don't think I win the title without Whiteside. Maybe I do, but I felt getting that size and being able to slide Drummond to power forward, I matched every team in every area. So that was the goal. So Spurs had a more talented team, I think, and more size in the wings and the guards, but then my bigs were superior. So I was banking on having an edge on every team. And then obviously against the Pistons, my bigs could negate his bigs. And obviously with Durant healthy, Harden healthy, Westbrook healthy, I went into the playoffs really, really hopeful that it was going to be my shot. And then obviously the Spurs drama comes around where you can't even make it up. They don't have enough players to field the team, which is really unfortunate for them and disappointing way to end the season for Jez, who incredible GM and built an incredible team, but that just opened things up, and that's when the hope really turned into confidence that surpassing the Spurs was my biggest hurdle, and they just were gone. So it was a strange, hollow feeling that I'd had the Spurs on the dartboard all year, throwing darts at Nelson's face, and they were gone. And it was a strange feeling, but obviously it's better than having to play them. But they deserved their shots, so it really was mixed feelings. And I reached out to Jez, and I could imagine how disappointed he would have been. But then we hit the playoffs, and we had the first round matchup against who was it in the play? I think it was New Orleans. Just double checking. Either way, it was total. The West is just stacked. So whoever we had in the first round, I was very wary of them being a really good team. There we go. Yeah, it was Pelicans. And look, I just thought we had the size against the Pelicans. If you look at their roster, they've got the absolutely stacked 4 talent, absolutely stacked for depth, picks, everything. So just a massively valuable portfolio, but just too young still. And especially when I had the bigs, I just covered the Pelicans in every area at this point. So we ran out pretty comfortable winners in the end. Even though Pelicans played well, we were too refined in 2K. So we moved on to the next series where Minnesota, and the times that I had tested, Minnesota probably gave us the most trouble. Just the system they ran always works. Dwight, Val always get the dives, always get the pick and rolls, always finish in the paint, always get offensive rebounds. Ball, Middleton, those guys have inconsistent shooting games, but they're great playmakers. They're solid defensive team. But then just stumbled across some settings that I think have insulated us really well. And we just, even if the game was really close, we would just kick on at the end. And I think that's the difference those established stars make. So for all those people who argue that, who are ageist, it matters. It matters in a game. So we went 4-0 against the Wolves, which I was surprised about. Ethan wasn't, poor guy. But I was surprised because I thought that would pinch one. But then we moved on to Memphis, which I thought genuinely had a chance to upset us. They have size, depth, defense. Their team just fits the NSL settings and the game for this year. So it did concern me. And there were some really close games with Memphis that I kind of had to turn away at the end just because it felt like it wasn't going to work out, and then it does. And going back to those established stars, they've had 10 years of the game, refining them, and it matters. And that's going to go some point soon. And then those players, like I spoke about, like Pelicans, and they're the ones that are refined. They're the showcase players. So it deserved to be a closer series on paper, but I just fine-tuned my team, and I'd gotten all the pieces that I wanted. I had heart off the bench. I had defense off the bench. And then a team I never really do well against is Pistons. So Pistons pretty comfortably got through the East. Full strength, like myself, really wary of the size and the defense, but we just had the size of Durant, size of Harden. I matched all his height in the starters and the bench teams, and surprisingly, that was the margin in that series was almost greater than any of the other margins of any of the series that I'd played. So we just hit our straps and hit the boost in the finals and really just put the Pistons away. So I didn't even get to enjoy those games until it was all over, and just the sheer relief of having a goal that was really difficult to foresee fulfilling and getting there. So we got there, and Portland, 2-time champions now. So obviously my team's going to be a lot different next season, a lot different. A lot of key free agents that I have to hopefully retain or find a backup plan for. But that's a battle for another day. So thanks for listening, watching. That's the Portland season recap. Love you, NSL community. All the best. Bye.